What's up, everybody? I am K. Marie.
I am Lou.
I'm Mary.
And we are
Murked in the Midwest. All right, guys. So we are jumping right into it. We're going to start with a trigger warning that this is an explicit episode. There's going to be some disturbing information. So we want to go ahead and put it out there right now. Right now. So don't get mad at us later. Like, what the hell? No, we're telling you now. Okay?
Just brace yourself.
Brace yourself. All right, so jumping right into it, as I said, we are in Kansas City, Missouri. And on January 15th, 1974, it was a winter day. 15-year-old Charlie Otero began his walk home from school. Charlie, his parents, and his 4 siblings, they had recently moved into a quiet suburban area. And it was just a normal day from school. He's like, hey, school is over. I'm about to go home.
Mm-hmm.
He walks up to his home and opens the door and walks in. And nothing seemed too weird immediately. He's like, hey, anybody home? There was no response, not even a bark from his dog. And so he starts walking towards his parents' bedroom, and he finds his father, Joseph, 38, was lying face down on the floor at the foot of his bed. His wrists and ankles had been bound. His mother, Julie, 34, lay on the bed bound in a similar fashion, only she had been gagged. Mm-hmm. He froze.
Of course.
After seeing this, that's a natural response. He runs out, to tell what he's discovered. A neighbor finds it, comes into the house, and realizes what's really happened because he tried to call the police, but the phone lines had been severed. Mm-hmm. So the police finally come. They search the house, and they find 9-year-old Joseph in his bedroom, face down on the floor at the foot of his bed. His wrists and ankles were also bound. The only difference being that over his head was a hood. And the police later, one reporter reported that there was actually 3 hoods over his head. Mm-hmm. Downstairs in the basement, Charlie's 11-year-old sister, Josephine, was found hanging by her neck from a pipe. She was partially nude. She was only dressed in a sweatshirt and socks, and she had been gagged. So, police are like, what the hell?
So, yes.
This is a quiet neighborhood.
Right.
Now there's this execution style multiple murder
of a family, of a young family.
In a neighborhood. And so they, immediately are looking at things. They say that all 4 victims had been strangled with lengths of cord from a Venetian blind. Mm-hmm. There were no cords like that in the house, so they knew that the guy had brought it with him. Mm-hmm. And semen was found throughout the house. It appeared as though the killer had masturbated on some of the victims.
Ew.
Although none of them had been sexually assaulted.
Disgusting.
Joseph's watch was missing from the scene and was never recovered.
So he gonna murder him and steal from him.
Yeah, still afterwards. And then Julie's purse had been dumped and was also, but there was no evidence of forced entry, robbery, or struggle. The only thing that was missing was the watch. So the coroner comes and he determines that all of the murders occurred well before 12 p.m., well before noon, around 8 or 9 in the morning. And their theory was that while Joseph had left to drop the 3 oldest kids off to school, or
he came in his house.
Yeah, to drop the 3 oldest kids off to the school. He came back to get the other 2 to take them to school. And the killer was already there, had already had Julie and the 2 younger children subdued, and caught Joseph by surprise. Also, someone had put their very large, unfriendly dog in the backyard. They say that the killer must have hung around for about an hour and a half and then took their car and left it parked near a grocery store not too far away.
Did the dog at least get one good bite in? Hope he bit him in the ass.
Nope.
He should have.
Should have. I hope.
And and so police are initially like, who is the Otero family to where they would
Right.
get this a brutal execution?
Because that really does seem like an execution. They're tied up. They've been strangled. It almost kind of seems like a hit. Because it wasn't real. I mean, a little bit of a robbery, but not really much.
And
you're talking about a family that probably has all kinds of things in their home. Why
exactly.
wouldn't they take it all?
Because Joseph was actually, he was born in Puerto Rico. And so after moving to the States, he had began a career in the military.
Mm-hmm.
And so like just before his death, he had retired from the Air Force, where he was a flight instructor and a mechanic.
So he was doing kind of good.
He was a fit guy. He was an excellent boxer. But like, so they're like, dang, like how big would this guy have been to take him down?
Mm-hmm.
And then, but all of his colleagues liked him, and like they couldn't find a motive where they could figure out why this would happen. And so the same kind of thing happened with Julie. She had been caught in like a downsizing at a Coleman company, but she would have been rehired when the business picked back up again.
Okay, so like a little layoff.
Exactly. All the time. So she was a friendly person, good mother. She was also, she had also studied the art of self-defense, and she had training in judo.
So she wasn't like, she knew how to defend herself.
Yeah. And so,
and a lot of times too, when you do martial arts, they do teach you how to take down like an opponent that's bigger than you.
But you imagine she has her two youngest kids in the house with her.
She's gonna be fighting for her life and theirs.
But imagine he gets your kids first.
Oh well, yeah, you might win then.
Now it's
do what I say.
Do what I say. Exactly. Everything that you've learned means nothing. Because I am threatening your child, so I'm going to tie you up while your child is threatened. And so they just really didn't know what to make of the case. And
they were such a beautiful family.
They were. You guys have to go. We'll post the picture, but they were just such a beautiful family. But this started, this was a murder that took place, and everybody was just kind of like
baffled, probably shocked, disgusted, like horrified. Can you imagine your friendly neighborhood where nothing really happens besides everybody just living their life, send the kids to school, to come home, everybody cutting the grass, making flowers look pretty, and then here we go.
Exactly.
Okay, so after the family has been brutally murdered and the son happens upon them, the police, of course, are called. But then appears a letter
9 months later.
In the Wichita Public Library, inside of an engineering book, there was a little letter left for the police to decipher. And here it goes. It reads, I write this letter to you for the sake of the taxpayers as well as your time. Those 3 dudes you have in custody are just talking and getting publicity for the Otero murders. They know nothing at all. I did it by myself and no one helped. There has been no talk either. Let's put this straight. I'm sorry this happened to society. They are the ones who suffered the most. It's hard to control myself. You probably call me psychotic with sexual perversions. Hang up. When the monster entered my brain, I will not know, but here to stay. How does one cure himself? If you ask for help that you have killed 4 people, they will laugh or hit the panic button and call the cops. I can't stop it, so the monster goes on and hurt me as well as society. Society can be thankful that there are ways for people like me to relieve myself at times by day dreams of some victims being tortured and being mine. It a big conflict game, my friend, of the monster play, putting victims number down, follow them, check up on them, waiting in the dark, waiting. The pressure is great, and sometimes he run the game to his liking. Maybe you can stop him. I can't. He has already chosen his next victim or victims. I don't know who they are yet. The next day after I read the paper, I will know, but it's too late. Good luck hunting. Yours truly, guilty.
But then he leaves a PS.
Oh, there's a PS. Oh, great. PS. Since sex criminals do not change their MO or by nature can't do so, I will not change mine. The code word for me will be blind them, torture them, kill them. BTK. You see he at it again. They will be on the next victim.
And that is such a difficult letter to read, not just because of the craziness of it, but of him purposely
Fucking up shit.
yeah, trying to like make it seem as though he's this uneducated person. But what he
Mhm.
was doing first, he was copying. This was shortly after the Zodiac killer. Like, well, this was like years after the Zodiac killer had, he had wrote in letters
Mhm.
and they were published, and this was like a known thing, and so the police started to believe that he was just copying that.
Mhm.
He was copying that idea
It
of the
was very
Zodiac killer.
contrite. It was
Yeah,
very meticulous to make it seem like he couldn't write.
exactly, exactly. And so it was the whole making it like, oh, it's such a burden to find new people, to take down their number, to follow them, the waiting and waiting and waiting. Like,
Mhm.
oh, my life is so hard. I
Yeah.
have to kill people. Like, it's like, no, you
You're
don't
a little.
have to.
You have to, sicko.
You don't
This man
have to.
play had so many clues to the shit he was doing. Just looking at the photos is creepy.
Yeah. He kept souvenirs from everything.
Yeah, and when he would
He
tell on himself, like he basically would reenact how he did it with like dolls and
Yeah.
pipes. So like the one family, the Otero family, um he mimicked Josephine. So he had this doll in which I was looking at. I don't know if y'all was looking, but it was a piece of a PVC pipe with a rope and a Barbie doll that was gagged
Yeah.
and
Oh my
hung, basically
god.
mocking how he did
Did
it.
it.
And he had called he sent it to um like a news station and called them and said it was something suspicious in a basement, and it was like inside of a cereal box. Like,
Yeah.
hey, this is what's down here. And it was
And
but
he knew he put the
he knew
body
he
in the
put it,
basket.
yeah, and he knew that's what he did to her. So he was like,
So he's taunting. He's taunting the
"You'll never
victims
catch
that.
Because
me."
the way they found the letter in the library was that he made a anonymous call to the police to tell them, "Hey, there's a letter in this book at the library." And yeah, so he was very much so like taunting the police and
Mhm.
um
And imagine the pain for the surviving children, knowing
right.
that he's just making a mockery and a joke of what he has now done, already tore up their family. I hope he wasn't. I hope the 15-year-old wasn't seeing it, but I would think it'd be kind of hard for him not to hear anything about it
Yeah.
because that type of murder
In a
happening
town like that.
in a town like that, you still have to go back to school. The kids probably talking about it because
Mhm.
parents like y'all ain't going nowhere. You bring your ass straight
Yep.
home, keep the doors locked, windows locked. No, you can't go play. That kind of thing.
Mm-mm.
Yep. And so, in the letter he says he's already chosen his victims. I don't know who they are, but whatever. He can't be stopped. So, on April 4th, 1974, just 3 months after the Otero murders, Catherine Bright, 20, and her brother Kevin, 19, they had went to their home at approximately like 1 p.m. and there was an intruder hiding in the house. The intruder told them he needed money and a car to escape from the California police. At gunpoint, Kevin was forced to tie his sister to a chair and was then taken to another room where he was tied up and gagged. A few minutes later, the man tried to strangle Kevin with a rope, but Kevin resisted and was shot twice in the head.
Mm.
Um, he heard sounds of distress from his sister in the next room, and he managed to escape and get help from his for his sister, but she died 5 hours after being taken to the hospital with 3 stab wounds in her
Mm,
Mm.
mm, mm.
abdomen. She was partially undressed, and there was obvious ligature activity around her neck. Um, Kevin, he assisted in trying to help for do a sketch of the intruder, but he was not identified, and they at this time they did not associate him with the BTK killer.
Hmm.
It
Even though it was kind of similar MOs, right? Because of the strangulation.
Yep,
That was like his thing he liked to do.
exactly. And then 3 years later, on March 17th, 1977, police were dispatched to 1311 South Hydraulic Street. They entered a home where they found 26-year-old Shirley Vian dead. She was on her bed, partially undressed, hands and feet bound, a plastic bag draped over her head. Once they removed the bag, they noted the BTK signature cord wrapped tightly around her neck. The armed intruder had locked Shirley's 3 children in the closet. Eventually, they freed themselves and called police.
Hmm.
Um, they were believing, oh, this was premeditated. It was again during the daytime, and there was no sign of forced entry. The killer had stopped one of the victim's sons on the street that morning, and showed him photographs of a woman and child seeking directions to their home. So
Mm.
he like actually talked to the kids, but no one was ever able to give an accurate description of him.
Hmm.
So by this time, everybody freaking out. Everybody's concerned about the BTK killer, but he was becoming like a ghost story. And so on December 8th, 1977, BTK placed a call to the emergency hotline, and he goes, "Go to this address. You will find a homicide, Nancy Fox." So they traced the call to a phone booth where witnesses say they recalled a blonde man, approximately 6 feet tall, using the phone booth. But the quality of the recording was too poor to perform any type of voice analysis. But they followed the caller's instructions and they rushed to the address. They immediately noticed that a window had been broken. Upon entering the apartment house, 25-year-old Nancy Jo Fox was discovered dead in her bedroom with a nylon stocking twisted around her neck.
Damn.
Unlike previous victims, she was fully clothed.
Hmm.
Fox's driver's license, just like Joseph's watch, was missing.
Hmm.
And they, of course, now they're like, oh, he's taking mementos.
Right.
Cool.
You gotta
Um,
remember them.
there was semen found at the scene, but
Disgusting.
again, later they did a autopsy and discovered that Fox had not been sexually assaulted.
Okay.
So this man was really just getting off on harming people.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Um, and so, like, like we already said, the Otero murder happened out of nowhere. Like, it came out of nowhere. And so,
Hmm.
like, as quickly as they started, it seemed like they had ended in 1977.
So they're thinking like either the killer's dead, incarcerated,
They're
probably
like,
something of that.
something. They're like, he vanished.
Ugh.
Um, but they people were taking all the precautions, like if getting home early, hurry up and knock on the doors,
Hmm.
um, and so people weren't going outside for weeks. People had bought firearms, like they was prepping because they like, I don't know who the hell he is, but if he come in my house,
He about to get some. We got something for him.
exactly, exactly.
Hmm. Pew
So
pew.
January 31st, 1978, BTK mailed a letter to the Wichita Eagle Beacon. Within the letter was a short poem about
Oh.
Shirley Vian, which was the lady earlier who was killed, but they didn't really know if it was BTK or not.
Oh, wait a minute. He wrote another one that had a poem because I saw the one where he had a
Yeah.
poem. So he just writing what love sonnets or murder
Yeah.
sonnets and letter. Ooh.
Yeah. Shirley Vian was the 26-year-old who was found partially undressed with her hands and feet bound and a plastic bag draped over her head.
Okay.
So he had wrote a letter in with a poem in it. But not funny thing, but funny thing is because it was a poem, they assumed it was like a Valentine's Day thing, and it got routed to the wrong department.
Oh,
Dang. So they're
It,
thinking it's one thing and it's something totally
yeah,
different.
it was routed to the advertising department by mistake, and it went overlooked for days. And that only pissed BTK off.
Because why aren't you paying attention to me?
Look at me, Marsha, Marsha, Marsha.
Literally.
So he was like so upset at the lack of like publicity. So
Like, you
he
guys don't even care.
a month later he writes another letter,
Weirdo letter.
and he goes, "How many do I have to kill before I get my name in the paper or some national attention?" In this letter, he claimed to have murdered 7 victims, naming Nancy Joe Fox as the latest. Number 7 remained nameless, adding, "You guessed the motive and the victims."
Because he ain't got shit else to do with his day.
his bored ass.
According to the Wichita Eagle newspaper, even though investigators were unable to document the killer's claim, they took his word. They announced, acceptance of the body count and assumed that the 7th unnamed victim was Catherine Bright.
Mm-hmm.
In addition to these claims, the killer blamed his crimes on a demon and a mysterious Factor X. He compared his work with Jack the Ripper, the Hillside Stranglers, the Son of
Mm-hmm.
Sam.
He kind of seems like he's trying to mimic everybody. Like
Yeah.
he wants that prestige of those names. I mean, you think about Jack the Ripper. That happened in what, the 1700s?
Yep, and it still gives you like chills, like you're like,
And they do TV series and
they're still talking
documentaries
about. I
and
was just
movies.
watching an anime where he was in it, and I was like,
Me too.
yeah.
And the thing is that he was infamous because no one ever really knew who he was.
No,
I mean, there's speculation.
there are speculations, but we never he was never actually found.
Yep, never apprehended, just out here, strangling, murdering, killing prostitutes.
Yep.
Just another day.
His mama was a hoe.
Yeah,
Mhm.
she
No, for
was.
real, yeah,
She
yeah.
was. And so BTK, he claimed that he was sorry for the murders and that a monster had entered his brain.
He wasn't sorry.
And once again, he warned that he had chosen his next victim.
Yeah, because if you were sorry, you wouldn't be talking about you chose nobody else. You're lying.
And so until March of 2004, so that's a big span. We were in 1978, now in 2004. The last confirmed incident took place on April 28th, 1979, when he waited inside a house in the 600 block of South Pinecrest for the 63-year-old owner to come home. When she did not show up, he was pissed.
The audacity.
He sent the woman a note with one of her scarves saying, "Be glad you weren't here because I was." Yep. And so the investigation became dormant through most of the 1980s.
Mm-hmm.
There was no leads. It kind of became like a cold case.
Okay, so up to this point, we know the murders that have happened. We know of this BTK killer terrorizing the police and the neighborhoods and communities, where people are just terrified of what is going on and no leads at all. Um, so in 1983, kind of in his dormant phase, where there weren't murders going on, but there was still high alert and people were scared. In 1983, 2 teams of detectives were assigned to reinvestigate the murders and kind of collect samples from people that had been flagged as possible suspects. They had like this computer that was generating um, information and possible connections and correlations. And so they went around and they collected over 200 samples from people that were flagged by this computer. And in these samples, they were all volunteered by the suspects. Like, it wasn't anybody that they had to like fight and like, you know what, we're gonna make you.
They were like, okay,
We'll do it. Probably because they knew they weren't the freaking BTK killer.
That part.
And it eliminated all but 12 names on their list. And it included 5 who had refused. Oh, actually, 5 had refused to be tested. So 5 of the people who ended up not being eliminated had refused to be tested.
Okay.
And then in July, the investigators they set up this task force and they called it the Ghostbusters. The Ghostbusters got their name, and they utilized this computer consultant that helped them even go further and deeper into discovering who the BTK killer was. And with this mass data collection, it was, 7 years after the last murder had actually happened. They used an IBM computer with that list of suspects that it had given them. They were able to discover that there were some clues that they had missed.
Yeah.
Um, Starting with all the murders occurred basically within this small radius of about 3.5 miles.
Mhm.
Okay. So that led them to know, you know, they believed that the BTK Strangler felt comfortable and where it was like his murder zone, or what do
Mhm.
they call it?
The triangulation or the what's it called?
It
Uh,
because there's a term for it,
there is. You know the
but it's like
where they're comfortable killing
yeah, it's
within
their
their
killing area where they feel comfortable
zone.
to work.
I know what you're talking about.
And so during the fall of 1984, one of the task force investigators took the letters that he had wrote in Xerox letters,
Mhm.
and those were in Syracuse, New York, and or he sent them to Syracuse, New York, and they were actually analyzed. Um, so with that copying of it, they weren't really able to trace like what the paper was like, what type of ink, the things that you would be able to get from a fresh document where you could actually see the writing. So that didn't actually lead them anywhere. Um, but they kept at it and they kept trying to get down to it. The technician went on to say that the machine used to generate the copies um, must have been located in Wichita at
Mhm.
at the university library, but they weren't able to get anything further as far as like the writing in the paper. Then after that, during the investigation letters, the content of the poems were also some clues that they used. It said that they discovered that the poem had patterns that were like a nursery rhyme
Mhm.
called Curly Locks, which I've never heard of.
I
I've never
haven't
heard
either.
of it. Heard of that nursery rhyme, but it had patterns of that, and it appeared in games of a puzzle magazine that was for children. Then they looked at the other poem that he wrote about Fox, and it was called "Oh Death to Nancy," and it literally was a poem that was a parody to a song called "Oh Death."
Uh,
So
okay.
he was just crazy. That's really all it boils down to. And this uh poem that it was taken from, that was actually something that they found had been published and was inside that Wichita State University.
Okay.
So it's like really narrowing down. This is where this dude is operating from. Okay.
Okay.
Law enforcement officials had not yet released the B2K letters to the public, or I said B2K.
BTK. Bum
Not
bum
BT.
bum.
I was about to say
Not
that.
not my booze. Not America. Not the red jacket flapping back. No,
No,
never
not them.
him.
I'm fucking weak.
But the BTK letters were not public at this point. But they were just trying to hold back some things so that they can make sure when they get the person, they got
Yeah, exactly.
them. Okay. So they had law enforcement then went on. Let's see. I'm sorry. So the Captain Paul Dotson stated that he had basically like a intention of, they wanted it to be like when he appeared, like they would know. Hence why they held back those documents. Then
Right.
finally, when they used the available evidence, they narrowed down those areas where the Otero's home was, where Fox's home was, where Bright's home was, in addition to the investigation of the list of men that they had, because remember they had the 12 men
Yeah.
of suspects that the computer had generated. These men lived within about 1.25 mile from, the homes of the victims. So they assembled the list. They were basically white male students who attended Wichita State between the years of 1974 and 79. And then that list actually got smaller. It went from 12 to 8 people.
Okay.
And then they checked for ones who had checked out that mechanical engineering book. Because
Mhm.
remember,
One of
the
the
letters was put in
yes.
an engineering book. And so they used that, uh, and then with that evidence, the main crux of our is that this is actually what the detective said. He said the main crux of our search always was geographical. According to the behavioral science, the individual lived close, and it was like his strike zone. That's
Yeah.
what it was called.
Okay.
Okay, and so once they had all of those things put together, the investigators used the computer to try to come up with a more precise list of suspects, and the computer gave them. Now we back up. How we back up to 225 suspects? But somehow they're back up to 225 suspects, and one by one, the detectives basically did a process of elimination, going back through their details. And one of the key pieces of evidence that the killer had left behind was the semen.
Semen. Mhm.
So the lab techs were able to determine the type of semen found had fewer than 6% of. It was like fewer than 6% of
Man
males
had
would
this type
leave that type of
of semen.
semen.
Okay.
So that was their evidence of, or how they used to kind of narrow down
Yeah.
and get a
Because
smaller
they were
list.
working hard trying to figure out who this guy was.
And they had no clue. They had no
None.
clue.
None. And so, this was a 2-year investigation and it ended without an arrest. But it did give them some more knowledge, and some of the samples collected formed the basis for the work of the squad. And so, October 31st, 1987, the body of 15-year-old Shannon Olson was found dumped in a pond in an industrial area. She was partially disrobed and stabbed numerous times. Her hands and feet were bound. The murder sparked off an outbreak of letters to the police and media suggesting the BTK Strangler committed the crime. Then on December 31st, same year, 1987, Mary Fager, the married mother of 2 daughters, returned to her Wichita home after spending 2.5 days out of town. Upon entering her house, she discovered her husband, Philip Fager, dead. He had been shot twice in the back.
Damn.
Her 2 daughters, 16-year-old Kelly and 10-year-old Sherry, were both found strangled in the hot tub situated in the basement of the home. Sherry's hands and feet were bound with black electrical tape, which later washed loose, and Kelly Fager was nude. Soon after the Fager murder, someone wrote a letter to Mary Fager claiming to be the BTK Strangler. And he declared that while he did not commit the murders, he was a fan of whoever had. So he sent this to her, the surviving widow mother.
Like, I'm really impressed about the work that they did on your family.
Man, it wasn't me, but whoever did, kudos. And so FBI experts said they cannot say that the letter actually came from BTK. Um, but somebody who was close to the investigation said there was no doubt in his mind that it was authentic.
Mm-hmm.
And so, according to Lieutenant Landwehr, though, a local contractor stated to police that he went to the Fager house where he was doing construction work and discovered the father's body. He went on to claim that he had heard some noise in the house and fled in the family's car. The contractor was arrested in Florida 4 days later. According to Landwehr, the man claimed he had a total blank of the events that had occurred.
I bet he did.
Of course
He
he
was
did.
arrested and charged with the Fager murders. However, a jury acquitted him of all charges. Um, they have not closed the case because the lieutenant was confident that the contractor was the killer. So they believed the BTK killer when he said, "I didn't do these," and they thought it was a contractor that had been working on the house. Sure. Okay. So case is cold. Goes on, they can't find out who the BTK killer is. On August 4th, 2000, David Lure contacted Dr. Deborah Sherman Coughlin, the president of the Violent Crimes Institute, and asked her to draw up a profile of a killer based on the information at hand. This is the profile that she provided. From the information provided to me, which is limited, so she had no crime scene photos, police report, etc. I have constructed the most likely type of person to have committed the murders in the 1970s. I do not believe the murders from the 80s were connected.
Okay,
So she
why
was
didn't they
saying
give her
during that
pictures?
she was saying during that time.
Why didn't they give her pictures?
I don't know.
How are you gonna get a half profile?
A half profile.
We're gonna get a half profile. You don't need any pictures. You don't need any evidence. But figure out who it is for me, okay? You just do that in your spare time.
That. And so she says, one, he was single, white male, 28 to 30. So she was saying he was 28 to 30 during the 70s.
Oh, okay. I'm like, now wait a minute, because that ain't math. And he got to be darn near old as hell.
That he resided near Otero's or spent time in the area to form fantasy about Josephine. Mm-hmm. This was his main target. That he lived in a house, not an apartment. That he was over 6'1", tall and trim, neat in appearance with short hair, clothes darker by choice, considered quiet and conservative by those who would know him, modest. I believe people would mistake him as kind because of his quiet demeanor, but he suffers from extreme pathology, psychopath. There are no voices or demons. This man knew exactly what he was doing. He was, and if alive, still would be an extremely sad individual, sad for himself and his pain, completely self-absorbed. Because I did not have access to the letters. They didn't even give her the letters. His job status is questionable to me. I do feel that his job was very secondary to him. Money was not important either. His compulsion to kill was and always would be number one. He would not be satisfied with fantasy. He would be forced to act. Therefore, I find it hard to believe that he did not kill between 1974 and 1977. If there were no murders in Kansas at that time, he was someplace else. Mm-hmm. He was very immature. The games, magazines, choice of child target, the fact that he did not sexually assault lends credits to this. He masturbated on the victims but did not rape. At the same time, he is very patient in his crimes, stalking and killing without detection. This makes him a paradox, which in and of itself would be disturbing even to him. I do feel like he's very comfortable with books and would have many of them in his home. Not just a few, many, many books. Wow. True crime as well as books which feed his fantasies. I feel as if they would be found all over his house. He was smart, highly intelligent. This is not someone who was heavily into drugs or alcohol. They do not cause his crimes. He may drink at times, but that would not be an excuse for the murders. Mm-hmm. He had a car, which would have had to been dark in color as well. However, this is a person who would enjoy walking around neighborhoods looking at people and victims. Due to his immaturity, he would be comfortable with people much younger than him. He would not have many friends, only acquaintances who really do not know him. All of his relationships would be superficial. He would not be married, and any history with women would be short-lived and meaningless. This is not a person who would stop killing on his own. There are 3 reasons to stop. Death, prison, too disabled or sick to kill. Period. This is a compulsive psychopath who enjoyed killing and wouldn't give it up. I generally give more detailed analysis, but due to limited information, this is what I can provide. Can you imagine the profile she would have gave if she had all the information? Mm-hmm.
She would have freaking found them.
Man,
you know, damn computer.
I don't need the cops. I got this on my own.
Shout out Dr. Deborah Sherman Coughlin. There are some things where she's a little off about, but
she's pretty.
Again, she's pretty spot on.
She's hitting
for the information she was given.
Hitting the nail right on the head.
Right on the head.
She even knew he had a short haircut with the bald spot. I don't know why I'm on people's hair today. I don't know. I can't help it. I just can't help it.
It's a thing.
It's a thing.
So, Wichita police invested 100,000 hours in at least half a dozen investigations from 1974 until 1991. BTK was not caught. The FBI called the case one of its top unsolved mysteries. And so it had been scaled down to one detective. And that was Lieutenant Kenneth Landwehr. And he stated that the case files were not just sitting around collecting dust. He said, I've been told by the chief that this investigation will stay open until we have no more reasonable leads to follow. Um, and so, they were interviewing multiple suspects. Uh, there was thousands of dollars spent in man hours, travel expenses, telephone bills. They were really trying to work it out.
Mm-hmm.
So over 25 years later, the Otero house has changed hands a half a dozen times. Charlie Otero and two siblings have since moved to Albuquerque, but they haven't been heard from since the whole Ghostbusters investigation. And then suddenly, in 2004, after so many years, the BTK investigation was relaunched after the killer sent a letter to the Wichita Eagle that claimed responsibility for the 1986 murder of Vicky Wegerle,
Regular?
who was strangled in her home.
Mm-mm.
And he provided some very convincing evidence, including crime scene photos and her driver's license. She was the mother of two children, one of whom was at home the time of the murder.
Such a
Damn.
creep.
Okay, so yeah, at this point, there's a series of letters of BTK Strangler Killer just taunting the police, sending in letters of um 3-page letters with
Cause he
like
ain't got shit
word
else to
puzzles.
do with his
Ain't got
life.
nothing else to do.
He's just like, you know what, guys? I want to give you a little bit about my history. Let's sit down and have a little history lesson.
Chapter 8.
Let's have a chitter
And,
chat. I got some puzzles for you if you're a little bored.
and then on the third page, here's some pictures. And so, October 22nd, 2004, a suspicious letter was left at a UPS drop box. Police suspected that the letter was written by BTK, and so it was discovered on the 30th anniversary of BTK's first communication with the authorities. And so the contents of the letter and the identity of the person who alerted police were still unclear. So homicide detective Kelly Otis of Wichita Police was working the BTK case, and so he interviewed people who were in the immediate area of the office building, who worked there, and hoped that somebody might have saw the person who left this letter. On October 26, 2004, Beth Jett of Cake TV News quoted an unidentified man saying, "You could see the nervousness in his eyes. I was right around the corner from the UPS drop box, and he looked back at me, and that's when he took off." The man believed that the suspicious person he saw might have been the BTK killer. And so at that time, he would have been around 50 to 60 years old with graying hair and a medium stature. In the meantime, the police they kept poring over all the clues left by the BTK killer, and it was it was clear that he had gone to great effort to misguide and confuse the authorities by providing them with false information or mixing in subtle truths. It was almost certain that he was highly educated and well read, and so he also would use the name Thomas King in one of his letters, very possibly yet another clue to his choice of literature. There's a Canadian author of articles who goes by that name. And so
It
both
still fits the initials of BTK though.
Yes.
Thomas King, like he's like left off the bill part, and then
Yep.
he's doing a lot. He's giving
Yep.
a lot of pick me.
And so like by, his writing style and stuff, they pictured him as more of like a James Joyce style of writing. And so both Thomas King and James Joyce are two of many famous authors who, works have been studied by literature students.
Okay.
And so they're like, could BTK have studied these authors at some point at the university? And there seems to be like a lot of links between him and the school, especially, um, they're like, with the finding the textbooks in the library, the letters in the textbooks at the libraries. And so with all the evidence, there was a good chance that BTK was once a student at the university or may have even worked here. However,
I mean, they're saying he was highly intelligent. He could have been from what is showing, like he could have been a professor, honestly.
Exactly. But here's the thing. They also didn't want to follow that because they're like, he could be doing this to mislead us.
Of course. Well, because
Mhm.
he been playing games for 30
Yeah,
Man, been
years.
so
playing Blue's
he could
Clues.
be purposely quoting or sounding like authors who are studied at this university, so that y'all looking at the university
Mhm.
instead of where I actually am over here.
Mhm.
And so, they were just like they didn't really know what to do. So Kenneth Thomas and Ralph Kilman devised a tool known as the Thomas Kilman conflict mode instrument.
They got a lot of instruments, computers, and all kinds of things going on to try to get this together. They really need to give Sister Girl all the letters and, you know, the letters, the crime scene photos. We could have had this wrapped up
We
years
could have had
ago.
it wrapped up.
Years ago.
But this tool was used to help people handle conflict. So they, now they're asking, okay, so when he used the name Bill Thomas Kilman, could he have been indirectly referring to this conflict instrument and, still trying to mock the police? Probably, because that's all he wants to do in his letters is say, look at me and mock the
Mhm.
police.
Yeah.
And so on November 30th, 2004, the Wichita police did a press release offering a great deal of background information supplied by BTK about his life. And so they were like, they thought the concept that, the whole serial killers want to be caught,
Mhm.
all that stuff, they were like, it's pure fiction, actually. Serial killers are psychopaths. They are entirely self focused. They will not intentionally put themselves in harm's way. Psychopaths are notorious liars, and BTK is no exception. So now that he supplied a number of supposedly true facts about himself,
Mhm.
what are they supposed to do about it? Are they supposed to chase him down now, investigate this? And they're like, I don't know. Like he's really got the police questioning every goddamn thing. They're like,
Mhm.
should we do this? Should we do that? Maybe that's what he wanted us to do,
Mhm.
so we should do this. But if we do that, maybe he planned for us to do that.
Right.
Like he has them all in
All
their
over the
head.
place. Yeah.
All
All
in
over the
their
place.
head. And it's like it's crazy though, because he's doing this simply by instilling fear by committing these murders in such
Mhm.
heinous ways and starting out of nowhere.
Mhm. Picking different victims, working
Yeah,
in
kind of
different
all over the
methods.
place and not
And
taking blame for some but giving kudos and
come on with the kudos. And
Mm-mm.
really, honestly, it almost feels like no one is safe. It's like how mass shootings make us feel that there's like no place sacred
yeah,
when they happen in that manner.
exactly.
So too much fear. He definitely done read a psychology book somewhere about how tactics and
Yeah,
fear.
absolutely. And so in November, that's when they revealed the information about BTK that he revealed about himself. And so they gave out these details. They said BTK claims he was born in 1939, which would make him 64 or 65 years old.
Mhm.
His father died in World War II. His mother and grandparents raised him. He has a fascination with railroads, and between 1950 to 1955, his mother dated a detective with the railroad.
Oh,
Interesting.
his ass was on giving them damn port as hell.
Yes, he was.
He get on my fucking nerves.
In the early
It was
1950s,
you.
it was you. In the early 1950s, he built and operated a ham radio. He also has knowledge of
Who cares?
photography.
I made a hand radio when I was 12. Did you see my Matchbox card too, guys? Get a
That's probably why
fucking
he's such a
life.
fucking attention whore.
He also has knowledge of photography and can develop and print pictures.
Good for you.
He also likes to hunt, fish, and camp. Like he is doing this like as a dating profile.
No one
Bro.
gives a
In
shit.
1960, BTK claims he went to tech school and then joined the military for active duty and was discharged in 1966. At which time he says he moved back in with his mother. He
Poor
worked
mom.
repairing copiers and business equipment. He admits to soliciting prostitutes.
I wonder why.
Because no one wants to deal with your ass.
And so they're just kind of like, oh, we don't know what to believe is true or false.
What we do know is that you're crazy. We know that. We know that you're a sick individual.
Yep. And so, they're like, maybe he was in the military, maybe he wasn't.
We don't know shit. That's what they're saying. We don't know. We know that he's possibly What did they say during the time of the crimes? He was like, they thought between 28 and 30. So we know he about 50 something.
50 something.
Something. We know he didn't kill a bunch of people.
Those are facts. And so,
and he won't fucking leave us alone. He's like a bad ex-boyfriend. Just fucking keeps writing goddamn letters. Like, keep that shit to yourself. Fucking creep.
And so, in mid-December 2004, an unidentified man found a suspicious white plastic bag wrapped in rubber bands in Murdoch Park. He took the bag home. Why? Looked inside it and was surprised when he noticed items that may have belonged to some of BTK's victims. There was a driver's license belonging to Nancy Fox and a letter along with other objects. The letter was similar to the one that they had found earlier in May.
Okay.
And it displayed a list of chapters taken from this crime library story. But they were listed differently. Like chapter 13 was changed from "Will there more" to "Will there be more?" Yet, after the May letter, the title was changed to, like I said, it was changed to "Will there be more?" And so it was like in his latest communication, he was making an effort to correct his grammatical errors.
Probably he was tired of reading them himself.
And he was also an avid true crime reader.
Oh, God. Please don't be killers, y'all. We're trying to teach y'all to be better. We just want to live kumbaya. We want to tell you about the crazies, but we don't want you to be crazy, okay?
Yeah, don't be crazy. And so law enforcement in Wichita are like 99% sure that they're like, okay, we're gonna be getting this guy pretty soon. That they have high hopes.
Mm-hmm.
So let's see what happens. All right, guys. So that is going to wrap things up for today. This will be our part 1. And
it's our first 2-parter.
I know, I'm so excited. But this was a long one, and there's a lot to the story. We wanted to make sure that we didn't miss anything, and we also didn't want to keep you guys here forever.
Right, because who needs 3 hours of just listening to us drone on and on?
They would like it, probably.
Right? Honestly, we could go that long, though, like if we really wanted to.
We just need some more wine.
Just one more bottle. I think we can push through. But no, so yeah, tune in next week for part 2 of the BTK Strangler. Guys already know at this point that you can reach us at murkedinthemidwest@gmail.com. We are on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook, all as Murked in the Midwest. So go follow, go like, go share, go comment. We want to talk to you.
Tell your grandma, your uncle. Your Uncle Pookie.
All of them.
All of them.
We also want to hear from you guys. Any stories that you suggest that we do. Any feedback. We love to hear it. And so, as I said, we will talk to you guys next week. Bye.
Bye.
Hasta la vista.